One of my pet peeves is folks not knowing the basic tools of their job. Well, here's some insights on how you can improve your own productivity and the productivity of people around you, starting right now. Hi, I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. If you want influence and power over your day-to-day activities, if you want to be more productive and get more accomplished in less time, then understanding how to use the basic tools of your job can make a tremendous difference. We're currently in a world where executives don't have a secretarial pool. Executive level individuals don't have someone managing their calendar, for example. We don't have the slow pace of printed email or memos. Instead, we've got email messages like every freaking second. We've got calendar events. It's so easy to have a meeting these days that folks just stand up meetings left and right. Well, I collect old books, and I've got books about executive productivity from the 1940s, 1950s. And this, I think, was maybe the golden age of executive productivity. An executive was spending 3 to 4 hours doing actual work every day. Now, that doesn't seem like much because a typical executive can be working for 10 hours a day. And by the way, you might be saying, I'm not an executive. Well, when I say executive, I mean high-income professional, somebody who is receiving a mid-six figures or better income. And that's really an executive level position, somebody who spends more time in the office than on the street. Here's what I mean now. Today, the average executive spends an hour and a half doing productive work. Today, the average executive is required to do their own paperwork, to send their own emails, to make their own calendar schedules. Now, in the upper echelons of executive, yeah, they have administrative assistants and stuff, but the typical middle manager, the typical high-income professional, the typical sales professional, the typical entrepreneur, they are doing a lot of administrative work that in the 1940s and 50s they just wouldn't have to do. In fact, back then all you had was a telephone and paper. There wasn't an email, there wasn't fax, there wasn't anything other than mail. And it actually made them more productive, helped them accomplish more, and created many of the legacies that we know today. Now, if you look at executive behavior today, the behavior of those top performers that are making $250,000, $300,000, even $500,000 a year, you'll notice they have similar behavior. First off, they control their environment. Their environment is free of distractions. The environment has just the work at hand. It focuses on things like there's a writing desk for just doing the writing. There's a secretarial person or an administrative assistant who does calendar, correspondence, and contact management. There's other communications as well. There's other individuals in the organization have specific roles. They may, for example, be a project manager, and they're going to manage a number of projects, and they're going to roll up the project information to the executive or the manager or the program manager, who is then going to summarize the status of deliverables. See, if you're worried about every minute detail of a project, yes, that will drive those back and forth communications. But remember, I started out here talking about mastering your basic tools. There are two types of tools. One type of tool is the skill set required to do your job. So there's common skill set like project management, procurement management. Project management helps you identify the beginning, middle, and end of a set of work, the deliverables necessary, kind of build out a schedule. Procurement management helps you identify and evaluate the different individuals who can fill in parts of the resources on the project side. Those are kind of given. But in the case of, I could do a lot of technical writing. I have to have certain subject matter expertise when it comes to regulations, when it comes to laws, rules, and standards and policies. And that's my subject matter area. If you're an engineer, you need to know the chemical engineering elements. There's all these vertical skill sets. So when folks say, hey, look, you're a high-income professional, you shouldn't have any worries. Well, you've had to invest in the knowledge of your particular skill set. But never once have they showed you how to use Microsoft Office or SharePoint or, different kinds of writing tools. Very often, these are second guessed. So you have your unique skills for your job, your subject matter expertise. But number two, you also have the common skill tools that you need to learn effectively. Like, so for example, if you're going to have 5 people working on a report, how do you organize the report so that individuals can do their own contributions? Or do you set up one individual who receives all the contributions and then organizes them, puts them together? If you have no technical writers or administrative staff on your team, then who's going to be the designated person to do the editing? Are you going to send around revisions by email, or are you going to put it on SharePoint or some kind of shared directory that has cooperative editing opportunities? See, these are things that you're not taught about, but when you understand them, it makes your life easier. There are challenges that once you understand them, you'll see how dumb everybody around you is, but that's an ongoing theme. Here's my point. When you know how to use certain tools correctly, you very often can get more work done because you're not chasing revisions. You have a routing slip, for example. Back in the 1950s, if they needed 3 signatures for something, they would use a thing called an envelope. And the envelope had a list on the front that had a list of names on it. And whatever's inside the envelope would be passed around those individuals with the list of names. And each one of those individuals would attach a memo with their, they might have red penned their feedback. The memo would summarize their feedback. And so this package would get routed around the office, and then by the time it gets back to the lead on the project, they would have all of the memos associated with feedback. They would have all of the revisions on this one document, and they would have a kind of a package of work to work on. It wouldn't be emails coming in on Thursday and Friday and something coming in 2 weeks ago, and now they've sent you a revision and you just didn't see it. It's all forcing people to work one step at a time. So in the current modern working environment, how can you set up toll gates or steps in a process to go from idea to completed element? Well, very often those tools are needed. Now, I will give you a warning. If you're really good at SharePoint, you will be regulated, whatever the damn word is. You will be the one that has to get stuck with SharePoint. So I want you to have skills in these areas, but I want you to put somebody on staff to manage it for you. Now, here's the problem. A lot of folks who are not familiar with these tools will often customize the hell out of them to make them easier for them to use, but that doesn't facilitate the use for everybody on the team. So in learning how to use these tools, I would highly recommend you learn how to use them as directed. So I was a Lotus Notes administrator for 221 senior level executives all across the world who were supporting a domestic E2C program and a foreign E2C program. E2C Hawkeye is an aircraft that's it can double as an air traffic control. It does surveillance monitoring, friend to foe, that kind of stuff. The 221 executives each had laptops running what was at the time the program management office, which essentially was a few Lotus Notes databases. And one database, for example, was for action items. One database, the action items database, actually had minutes in it for each meeting. And then there was a scheduling database that had the scheduling and communications. That's where their mailboxes were. And then finally, they had a program, kind of like the program and the projects in a hierarchy. And they managed this, I think it was a $2.5 billion program in the dollars for the 1990s when I was doing this. And they managed to work very functionally in a classified environment, in a secured environment where outside tools were not readily available. Now, yes, they could look up things on the internet, they could send emails to each other, but they had to do it all in a secured environment, and the Lotus Notes platform helped them do it. One of the key things that made the management of that so productive is that I didn't customize the system for 221 executives. I worked with a template that was very basic. In fact, all the time people were making suggestions and they'd say, well, it'd be really nice if we could do this. I would put all that on a list and then I would prioritize it according to what got program work done. So I would look at who's the most effective executive, who's getting this stuff done. And I'd get feedback from the program office about which groups are on task and which groups are not. I could also just go in there and look at it, but it was so easy to understand. And I would constantly facilitate with these senior level executives their administrative support to take care of the majority of the data entry, records management, long-term action item lists. So for example, maybe a program had 35 action items they need to get done before the next quarterly review. I would encourage them to get an administrative person on task who was updating the records. They would go do the work. They would provide feedback in a weekly or monthly meeting. Usually it was a weekly meeting that rolled up into a monthly meeting. And then that administrative person who would then go in, which would be a project coordinator, would then go in and enter all the closures. Because when that was not done, the senior level people rarely ever updated their action item closure lists, rarely updated their minutes to meetings, rarely updated those other things because they were very often super busy with their day-to-day tasks. Now, what did this enable us to do? Well, it enabled me to focus in on the basic skill set that each executive needed to have, as well as the advanced skill set that each administrator needed to have. And we actually had monthly meetings with the administrators and quarterly meetings with the whole staff group to talk about how does this program management system work. Now, in other environments, we've used Primavera, which is a big program management system. We've also used spreadsheets and managed programs. We've also used Microsoft Project Server. It really just depends on the scale of what you're doing. But whatever tool you're using, you have to understand the basics of how to use it. And then to become a producer, to gain influence, you need to make sure that you put someone on your team who manages the day-to-day, because the actual skill of using Word the correct way, the actual skill of using a project management system the correct way is a $35,000 a year job. If you want to be at $180,000 a year, you can't be the one organizing SharePoint. You don't even need to give feedback on it. In fact, you want to be able to take that SharePoint out of the box and then grab somebody who's a SharePoint administrator and put them on that project, and that's it. Don't customize it. Don't tailor it. Don't do anything other than creating routing lists or workflows, because the core of what you must get done is not making the tool work to your needs and demands. It is instead understanding how the tool works, including its limitations. So those 221 executives actually would meet quarterly. And they would, if a laptop broke, I just gave them another laptop. Everything was pretty advanced for the time. We had a couple Lotus Notes server on the West Coast and on the East Coast. They would synchronize with each other. I don't see that level of complexity anymore, that level of integration anymore, unless you're maybe using Microsoft Office 365. But let me stop it right there. I'm not going to recommend what tool you use. What I'm saying is that no matter the tool you use, demand from yourself and those around you that they learn the basics of how that tool works. If you're sending emails back and forth with revisions on it, if you're having ad hoc meetings and nobody remembers who was assigned what in the meeting, then you are missing out on the fundamentals that create the results in your organization. And you need to go back and insist people start learning how to use tools, because if you don't have the core features, which this is the power play, you get the high income for knowing this: action list, issues, risks or potential risks, the program management part, the project management part. Knowing how to use the tools facilitates that, makes it easier. But again, you don't want to get stuck being the one that fixes stuff, that customizes things, that, hey, we need a SharePoint list and it has to do these 5 things. It's better to pull it from a template and do it than it is to make something custom, because once people understand that it can be customized, they no longer learn how to use the tool the right way, and then they customize it to cover up their deficiencies. There really isn't a right way of saying that, but you must understand skills in the tools that you use. There's a saying that a poor workman blames his tools. And the same thing goes for a skilled craftsman. A skilled craftsman understands the tool's limitations as well as their strengths and is able to drive forward the results with what they've got. So the main takeaway of today's podcast is, do you understand the tools that you need to use? There's a minimal set of tools that's going to be helping you with your day-to-day activities? Do you know how it works? Do you know the basic features? Number 2, do you know it well enough to train up a staff person to take over that role for you so that you can then focus on your high-value activities, those contribution areas that you're the subject matter expert, that only you can contribute? The administrative person would take care of the documentation. Are you holding other people accountable? If they're trying to pass you document revisions by email and your versions are all getting mixed up and everything, well, think about it in an analog way. How can you package that kind of thing up? Is it a shared directory? Is it a shared database somewhere? Is it a shared part of a server somewhere? It almost doesn't matter what tools you're using. When you understand the tool's limitations and strengths and you hold a team accountable to using the tools the right way, then you are able to move forward with higher productivity. And finally, are you looking at the activities that you're doing and asking the question, is what we're doing today advancing and moving forward the outcomes that we desire? That's the biggest thing. You don't ever want to get pigeonholed in an area for your own career where you're the SharePoint guy, where you're managing workflows or something. You want to be at the other end where you're benefiting from the workflow and you're driving forward the critical path that gets the results that you're looking for. This is how you get into a leadership position. This is how you gain influence. This is how you drive forward outcomes that you can bank on. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. I want to thank you for listening. If you have any questions about this or any other program, you can visit us at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. If you're a member of the Mastermind program and you want to go over this kind of training for your team, we can certainly sit down if you want a strategic session where we can talk about optimizing your day so that you can get more done in fewer hours. Let us know. But if you're just in general a subscriber or a coaching member, we always want to hear your questions. Your questions are the meat that makes this kind of thing possible. So if you have any questions on improving your productivity, improving the productivity of individuals around you, deciding what parts of your day-to-day activities can be outsourced or which ones cannot, setting up that back office that supports your day-to-day so that you can focus on the massive improvements and outcomes that are necessary. I've worked in environments with, like I said, the 221 executives across the United States. Actually, they're all around the world. And many of them, English wasn't their first language. I've also managed subcontractors all over a geographic region, each of which had 10 to 100 individuals working for them. I've also facilitated engineering meetings for remediation, computer risk-related remediation for a Fortune 100. You can always make a team more productive when you drill down to core tools, core training, and application of roles and responsibilities. Anyway, if you've got questions about this or anything else, visit us at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Ask your questions there. Thanks for listening.